right, thank you for staying with us. You are watching the special coverage of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Here earlier, we brought you a live stream of what happened at the National Arcade, where President Muhammadu Buhari laid the wreath as well as released the doves and other activities for the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. The president did that alongside his vice, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, as well as the FCT Minister and the Defense Minister, among other dignitaries there, and also relatives and family members of those who have died and paid the supreme price for our country. Now, we will be talking some more about the Armed Forces Remembrance Day in a jiffy. We have some guests here with us. In the studio, we have Senator Irebu, who is also going to be giving us more perspectives. He's a security analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
All right, we also have the other guest who is also with us, Abiodun Durowaye Habats. He is a veteran commander. He is the national coordinator, retired members of Nigerian Armed Forces, REMENBRANCE. He is joining us also to give more perspectives to this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be having Mr. Roy Ohidebi. He is a spokesperson of Coalition of Concerned Veterans. He will be joining us subsequently on the show to talk about this. Well, thank you so much, Senator Oregba, for joining us on this day. What does this day mean to you?
I think this day means sacrifice, heroism, patriotism, a time for appraisal, you know, especially for our servicemen and the sacrifices they've made, and also not only them, because sometimes when we talk about this sacrifice, we only think it's just about them. We forgot that their family too, their family, their wives, their children also follow in this process, because sometimes they are on duty, you know, the wife have to cater for the home front, the children, you know, have to bear the trauma of their dad not being around. Some of those vacuum is not something someone else can feel. So these are kind of sacrifice sometimes we don't even look at it. And it talks about, when I say patriotism, you know, for people to, you know, say, I'm going to die for my nation. It takes a lot. When you know that this profession, you're actually signing up for death, because anything can happen. Duty calls, sometimes people look at the servicemen, they admire their uniform, they, you know, those who are lucky to reach, it looks so glamorous, but it's actually a very, it's a risky job, it's a risky profession. It's something that, look, someone has really signed up, because things can come up. Yes, time of peace looks as if, but like we are having internal security operation now, when it was so tough in the Northeast, we know how many casualties people saw. Apart from the physical impact, there are other traumatic issues we don't talk about that need to be addressed. The post-traumatic stress disorder, we don't talk about it often, but it's something that is really, so today is a time to also appreciate them and remember that these people really are special people in our midst.
All right, well, let's go to Abiodun Durowaye. Well, let's hear from your own perspective about this day. How much do we look after those who have served and those who are serving, from where you stand?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The Armed Forces Remembrance Day is a commemoration of, it's a day of sober reflection, as it were, a day where we remember our fallen heroes, the widows, the orphans, as well as those of us that are still lucky to be alive. So on this note, I'd like to congratulate all my colleagues, including the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who also happens to be one of us. So far, so good. He has tried his best to ensure that our veterans are having, a good time, as it were, but we still have a long way to go.
Well, I recall that about this time last year, when we had the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, you were with us here in the studio where there were protests, where your group organized a protest, and, at a time like this, and certain grievances here and there about the, pension, remuneration, and certain other issues. Take us through that and how far that has come in terms of getting the attention of the government to address some of these concerns.
Yeah, thank you once again. Like I said earlier, the president, in his magnanimity, has been consistent in ensuring that our monthly pension is regular. That you can never fault him. However, there was this issue of the security development allowance, which in September we protested. We shut down the Ministry of Defense. I led that protest. Because there was an approval by the president for us to be paid the security development allowance, but then those who are saddled with the responsibility to effect the payment didn't do what they were supposed to do. And so we went into talks, we discussed, and we assured that yes, it was indeed approved by the president, but we should be patient, and we were patient until December, when we discovered that nothing was being done. And then we sent a letter out and threatened to also shut down the Ministry of Finance on the 10th of January. However, I think there were several interventions, and then eventually we got paid in the first week of January, just about last week.
All right.
When you hear things like this, protests, payments that are not all in one rounded, it gets to give one the impression that government is not doing enough for the veterans of the country. Do you toe that line that government is not doing enough for the veterans of the country, or you think they are doing slightly but they could do better?
Absolutely so. I'd like to, on this note, exonerate the president and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. I must be sincere with you that sometimes we are witnesses to his directive not being obeyed by those who are in authority, and it is very unfortunate. And so I wouldn't want to place the blame squarely on the table of the president. Rather, I want to...
But we are talking about a commander-in-chief here, so if he gives an order and someone doesn't, carry the order, there should be consequences.
Absolutely.
No one should dare, disobey or, flay whatever order
Absolutely
the president should be giving.
So. And that's the saddest aspect of it, because Mr. President has a lot, on his hands, and so sometimes they don't give him the real report. They don't tell him the real truth. I mean, one would have expected that veterans protesting and shutting down the Ministry of Defense for 48 hours. I mean, questions should be asked, and then people should, be queried. Well, as you can see, I mean, I don't know what else to say. The same thing with the Ministry of Finance. How can the president and commander-in-chief of a country give an approval? Does it require any further approval for them to bring it to effect? We had to hold a series of meetings. And at the end of the day, we were told they were going to look into it until the last threat we issued before they knew we were serious. Because if not that this money was paid, we were ready to also stop this Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration from holding. But, I mean, reasons prevailed, and thank God, we were paid, even though there are still, areas to be covered. There are still gray areas to be covered.
All right. Well, let's join Roy Ohidebe, who is joining us via phone. He is a spokesperson of Coalition of Concerned Veterans. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Roy.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well,
I am not the spokesperson. The spokesperson is sitting down with you there.
oh, okay.
I am the director of media,
All right.
CTV.
Apologies for that
Thank you, sir.
mix-up.
Yes,
For that mix-up. Yeah. So let's talk about the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Being a veteran yourself, do you feel honored? Let me ask that.
Thank you. Let me first give a lot of thanks and recognition to what the media has been doing in stabilizing the traumatic situation that Nigerian veterans have found themselves. Now, every Armed Forces Remembrance Day is another traumatic period for veterans because the charade being rolled out at the Eagle Square has been questionable. Questionable in the sense that those that you tend to declare to be honoring, they are on the street protesting. Their demands, their grievances that are statutorily approved have not been met. So it's not an honorable situation.
All right. Well, that's something that a lot of people have talked about. However, I mean, you would say that the current administration has done quite a lot. Earlier, I was speaking with our guests in the studio, where I said, well, the defense is receiving the highest budgetary allocation as we speak. So that's something to commend the current administration, isn't it?
Yes. You know, ordinarily, one should give kudos to leadership when they present budgets, they present approvals for disgruntlement, they present a listening ear. But we still have a problem in implementation. Everything that Nigeria does, especially our leadership, tends to veer towards accountability and delivering governance. But we have problem with implementation. So if you look at the budget, which is okay, well, let's look at implementation. Let's look at the last budget. Let's look at the implementation of the last budget. Was it enough? Was it delivered? Did it meet the needs that it was meant for? And now we will now look a way forward to say, okay, do we need this new budget? Do we need this? Do we have an increased insecurity? You know, so those are the things that sometimes mean.
Okay, well, it's a good thing we're talking about welfare of the veterans. About that, what are the security implications of the welfare of veterans not being properly taken care of? I'm taking this from the viewpoint of the larger society and the role veterans play settling back into society.
You know, when I was growing up, most of the schools I know, like secondary schools, high institutions, if you see a retired military personnel, he's the disciplinary porter. The one in my school, Edinburgh Grammar School, when I was growing up, when you see him, you talk in your chest. You understand? We have reverence. If they live in your street, criminals don't come there. But as time went on, when some of us now joined force, we saw a lot of them on the streets, complaining, crying, collapsing, dying. You know, so that became a concern. And within the system, we saw that there was need for some of us to pay money to get some drugs for ourselves. We were paying money to show uniforms that only the material was given to you. You know, so this deterioration of ethics and professionalism actually gingered us to leave. And coming out, so many of the people we left behind, they are looking at us. I am a mentor to a lot of young, vibrant military veterans. And, you know, so many of our military veterans, their children today are wearing the same uniform, and their daddies, their uncles, they are calling them to say, I was sick yesterday, they gave me 2 of the drugs, they said I should buy the other 6, please, can you help? So many of our veterans are finding themselves living in dilapidated environments. They are subject to kidnap, and they pay ransom daily because of that. So many of them are subject to all the ills of the society, with the peanuts being paid attention. So these are areas, critical areas that need to be addressed. And just recently, they implemented the approved SDA by the president. And the approval did not meet expectations. What were expectations? Expectations are that the current young soldiers that are leaving the service, they are paid in bulk, the SDA, because it's meant to debar you from the field against the state, and it's also meant to empower you. Now, what they started to pay was a 10% of annual salary, basic salary, of the 10, 20, 30, 40 years that they retired. And the value of money does not meet that time that is being calculated. So some are paid 30,000, 20,000 to empower you in 2023. You can see the numbers that are in the hospital right now. Immediately they get alert, their blood pressure will shoot up. And we are busy now buying drugs for them as part of the collaborative community that we have under the CCP.
All right, Senator Irogbu, why is it that despite the kind of allocation that the defense receive, sometimes we hear these complaints? Is it corruption that is responsible for this within the service, and how do we deal with that? And do you think that there's a direct correlation between some of the things that Roy raised about the treatment method on veterans and the rest of them, and then the behavior of those in service when it comes to commitment to service and living upright and all that?
Definitely, because sometimes when they look at the condition of those that have retired, you know, the squalid condition, some of them may be tempted to, like, let me take care of myself now, and so that I don't end up this way or begin to depend on pension. So, which is sad, you know, in itself. So it's a kind of cause and effect itself. Yes, within the wider system, there is issue of lack of accountability and transparency and accountability. Roy mentioned it, and either you or him asked a question when he said that the president issued an order and it was not being carried out, and he said the whole commander-in-chief issued order to. That means there is no mechanism for monitoring and evaluation, for checks to, like, I gave this directive, how is it being carried out? So people are just allowed to, you know, and this is an issue that has been, for as long as, when I was younger, this has been an issue up to now, despite, even though there have been some progress, at least now he admitted that the pension are being paid regularly, but there are still many things that are still yet to be sorted out. But there are some progress that are being made than how it used to be before. I remember how most of them used to be in Zone 4 in Abuja there, when they had their temporary office, the Military Pension Board, before it was taken to the permanent side. But yet, it's not yet. Roy gave you some instances of how some of them are in the streets. And thank God, before I came here, listening to my friend Air Commodore Abayomi Balogu, who is doing wonderfully well with his Green Heroes Foundation. If you go to some, what he's doing is trying to take some of these people out of the street, you know, and from where he's focusing, the issue of, in my intro, I mentioned it, post-traumatic stress disorder. some of these people, because of this condition, their mental health, becomes an issue. Back to the question you asked. So there's issue of corruption, lack of corruption in the sense of there's lack of accountability and transparency in itself.
Abayomi, do you think, or I would say, rather say, to what extent do you think politics is getting in the way of administration of military administration right now?
Well, like you know, everything is being politicized in this country as we speak today, and it is very unfortunate. But some of us keep saying that, denying the veterans of their rights, particularly this issue of the security debarment allowance, which is to, debar us from employing the skills that we acquired in the course of service against the state. It has been taken for granted. You can imagine someone being paid 20,000, 30,000. How can that one debar you from, using your skill against the state? Whereas our colleagues, our juniors that are passing out, the least that they take home is about 5 million. That is substantial enough for you, to put up 1 or 2 businesses. But the poor implementation of this particular inclusion of those of us that were hitherto excluded, I mean, it took us series of meetings, protests, threat to protest before we were even, considered. Because I can really remember vividly, this agitation actually started in 2020 when the immediate past Chief of Defense Staff excluded majority of us. Let me say about 85% of veterans. How can you say those who retired from November 2017 are the only ones, entitled to be paid debarment allowance? What happened to those of us who, retired earlier? We were the ones that trained those of you that are still in service and are about to leave, and then you want to tell us that we don't have skills? I mean, we were trained both at home and abroad.
Do you think that military administration has changed between when we had military governments and when we have a democratic system in place?
Absolutely so.
In what ways?
And it is very, very unfortunate. One would expect that, for instance, having one of us as the president, we have the minister as one of us, the national security advisor as one of us. I mean, issues like this should be taken, very seriously. And we keep saying it. If there's one segment of the society that must not be taken for granted, it is the veterans, the military veterans who, in their youthful ages, sacrifice their lives. Sacrifice their lives to ensure that this present democracy that we are running for over 21 years now, is sustained. And the danger in it is the way you're treating us, like the Honorable, the distinguished senator said, you give those who are in office now the opportunity, or rather the mindset, to steal whenever they find themselves in offices. Offices where they can, pilfer, because they know that once they leave service, they will face the same problem we are facing. And this is also unfortunate. The issue of debarment allowance is as serious as, tackling the insecurity that we have, that the insurgency has brought about.
All right. Senator, I have this question for you, and it came up in the earlier discussions. Now, what was raised was that there should be a special department, or if not a ministry, a commission, that will cater specifically for veterans. Do you think this will solve the problem?
Nigeria, we are good in creating a lot of department, commission, or even making laws. If there is no political will, if there is no implementation, it now becomes another office to create a job for the boys. But if the intention is being carried out, fulfilled to the letter, then it's a good one. And I think the president, was it last year, launched a veteran fund, Yes. So if this veteran fund could be, you know, even encourage Nigerians to, you know, to fund, to, you know, be part of it, it will help. But the problem is implementation. It has always been, if it is not corrupted, if the implementation of it is not corrupted, if people don't hijack it as a money making where they are another channel through which some people will just enrich their pocket, and the intended recipients are not, it doesn't get to them, then the motive has been defeated. But in the surface of it, good is good. But in addition to that, the veteran fund that the president launched, people can encourage like our big men, Dangote them and all this to fund it, you know, and so that, and then the implementation to ensure that the beneficiaries are taken care of them.
But who will administer the fund? Isn't it better that there is a separate commission that administers that fund instead of leaving it to the vagaries of the wider institution?
I think that will help actually. If we can bring, you know, independent, make it independent experts who are professionals to handle the fund, then and the fund can be checkmated one way or the other. That would be good, fantastic.
All right. Quite interesting perspectives. We'll take a short breather just before we get our concluding thoughts. Please join us again. All right, thank you for staying with us. It's the special coverage of the Armed Forces Remembrance Day here, and we have some veterans with us talking about, you know, kind of reflecting on the way the armed forces in Nigeria is faring at the moment. We have Abiodun Drowai Habat. He is a veteran, a national coordinator, retired members of the Nigerian Armed Forces, NAMEDAV, and also Senator Iroibu, security consultant, as well as Roy Okidebe. He is from the Coalition of Concerned Veterans. Let me go to Roy. Your concluding perspectives now. What sort of changes do you hope to see going forward in terms of how Nigeria honor its veterans, fallen heroes, and, you know, other security personnel who are making the sacrifices to keep the sovereignty of the nation?
Oh, thank you very much. Like I said earlier, structure, implementation, policy, and accountability. Now, if you look at the Nigerian Legion that is approved by the legislature in Nigeria and the Nigerian Constitution, it has failed in its purpose. You know, and you know, if you now see why the tenure of General Olusegun, he brought in the Veterans Federation of Nigeria. We had 2 different sessions of 3 days retreat to come out with a document. We even invited international veterans from other countries, and they also made input in that document. We had 3 committees. Abiodun sitting with you there is a secretary to one of the committees. I am also a secretary to one of the committees. Then the current Legion chairman is also a chairman, he heads one of the committees. So I don't know why the agreements reached to help to buttress a better welfare system for veterans was not implemented even immediately as the current Legion chairman enters into that seat. You know, another thing you look at again is in the Ministry of Defense, there is a Veterans Affairs Department. And that Veterans Affairs Department is not headed by veterans. The Ministry of Defense, there are key positions that needed to be held by veterans because he who wears it feels it. I will appreciate the current PAMSEC of the MOD and Dr. Kana. He has done so much to harmonize all the gray areas, put himself out of his natural responsibility.
Okay.
So we are grateful for this opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me go to Abiodun. Tell us what you look forward to in the coming years.
Thank you very much. Well, like my colleague in Lagos, Roy, had pointed out, there are still some gray areas that needed to be taken good care of. We have started that process of trying to see how the implementation of the SZA is made in such a way that those of us will not be shortchanged. I mean, those of us who are the beneficiaries will not be shortchanged. And I must also add my voice, to appreciate the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense, Dr. Abubakar Kana. He has been of immense, help in seeing to the implementation because he took us to the Ministry of Finance, interfaced, between the 2 ministries to ensure that we got result. Otherwise, we won't be saying what we are saying here. So I want to also congratulate my colleagues who are still alive, the widows and the orphans. We are getting there, and we'll do everything humanly possible to ensure that our colleagues, do not regret serving this nation. Thank you very much.
All right, Senator Iroigbo, your final words. How do we make the service attractive to those who are aspiring or those who are coming? How do we make it, because of some of these experiences, sometimes, it definitely has a ripple effect on.
Yes, just like we've already cited that what we are witnessing, some of these complaints is also impacting negatively on those who are serving to be tempted to take care of themselves. So how to make it, attractive to those who want to serve is to ensure that those who have already served have been taken care of. And how to, remove some of this bottleneck. And like I said, government have enormous responsibility because funding of the veterans is competing with other needs too. So, and this is what we must bear in mind. And this is where this veteran funding comes in, where we can encourage other private individuals to, join hands in ensuring that, because the more the country is secure, they can go about doing their business safely. We must make sure these people, these veterans, they are people that have been trained, that have knowledge of security. If they go rogue, the whole country will suffer for it. So we should make sure that their needs are taken care of. Everybody should be involved. The veteran funding should be funded, and like he asked and suggested, even if it means putting it as an independent so that it can be managed efficiently instead of putting into the system and it becomes an issue. Roy cited those veteran departments that are not being headed by the veteran. It's an issue that needs to be looked into.
All right, well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for the insight and perspectives on this special occasion. I would once again also say congratulations for making it till this time and for keeping Nigeria safe and, making the sacrifices that you made while you were in service. And at this point, I would also like to ask our audience to also, extend some kind gestures. Next time you pass the checkpoint, handing out a bottle of water or buying food, you know, for the security personnel you see at the checkpoint is not out of place. It's simply saying thank you for the services that you render to the nation. My name is Ayuba Ilya. At this point, we'll be handing over to Christiana Amodu, who will be joining shortly after the breather for more perspectives, for more economic angle to the discussions we have.
Thank you.
Mr. Kehinde Amodu has been also very, very helpful with this discussion. Thank you.
It's been a very interesting discussion.
All right. Thank you so much, viewers, for watching. Stay tuned. And for those who will wish to join us other times, we are always streaming live on YouTube and also across all social media platforms. My name is Ayuba again. Bye for now.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.